Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX World. I'm Megha Sharma and let's take a look at the top stories of the hour. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has once again emphasized on a meeting. He says that he's ready to meet the Russian counterpart anywhere except Moscow. Meanwhile, Russia has responded by naming Istanbul as the preferred venue for potential talks. Heading to the United Nations, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dismisses the Palestinian recognition as shameful capitulation. This comes as over 150 countries recognize Palestine as a state. Germany says that it is open to an EU plan to free up $235 billion in frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine after reports by a media agency that said that the funds would be replaced with EU-backed bonds. The issue marks a shift for Berlin, which had previously raised legal concerns over fully seizing the Russian assets. Italy has now deployed a second Navy ship to escort the global Sumud flotilla of about 50 civilian boats carrying aid to Gaza after it was targeted by drone attacks. As per the Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto, the flotilla also includes activists like Greta Thunberg, while Israel insists aid must be delivered only via its ports. Taiwan is searching for 33 missing people after the super typhoon Ragasa caused a barrier lake to overflow, leaving 14 people dead and sweeping away a bridge. Many victims were too elderly to evacuate in time, raising questions over Taiwan's evacuation procedures as the government now studies ways to prevent similar disasters. Sweden and Poland held Operation Gotland Sentry, simulating rapid defense of the strategic island of Gotland, just 300 kilometers from Russia, to secure Baltic Sea supplies routes and deter potential attacks. While military chiefs stressed the island's crucial role in NATO defense plans and regional security. China's Commerce Ministry has announced that it has added 3 US entities to its export control list and 3 more to its unreliable entity list without naming the companies involved. The move marks Beijing's latest countermeasures amidst escalating trade and technology tensions with America. China's Premier Li Qiang and EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen have stressed cooperation amid growing trade tensions and US President Donald Trump's new tariffs, discussing export controls, market access and overcapacity, while Beijing calls for strategic independence and responsibility. Top story of the hour. Italy's Defense Minister Guido Crosetto has now warned that the situation for the Gaza-bound global Sumud flotilla is worrying, cautioning that the safety of civilians on board cannot be guaranteed. He has described the previous drone attacks on some of flotilla's vessels as totally unacceptable, prompting Italy to send naval support, including the ship Alpino, to assist if needed.
Male a nessuno, ma vi assicuro che il clima è preoccupante e voglio usare questo momento per trasmettere a tutti quelli che sono a bordo di quelle navi, anche attraverso quelli di voi che con loro parlano, di capire che il clima è preoccupante e noi non siamo in grado, una volta usciti dalle acque internazionali e entrate nelle acque di un altro Stato, di garantire la sicurezza, né noi né nessun altro paese al mondo. E ho chiesto, anche grazie all'aiuto di molti di voi, fino a che punto voleva spingerci la flottiglia e se doveva essere una nostra preoccupazione il fatto che questa operazione potesse, una volta entrata nelle acque territoriali israeliane, essere rischiosa per i cittadini, per le persone che c'erano a bordo. E ci siamo chiesti cosa noi potevamo fare, cosa il governo poteva fare, cosa la difesa poteva fare per fermare, per impedire che si arrivasse a un punto di non ritorno. Quello che abbiamo potuto fare era questo, quello di inviare una nave in questo momento, alla quale se ne aggiungerà un'altra, nave Alpino, che è già partita, e che dispone di altre capacità, casomai servissero. Ma non è nostra intenzione muovere le navi militari per porre guerra a un paese amico. Noi siamo lì a tutelare i cittadini italiani come lo siamo stati, come lo sono le navi della Marina Militare quando ci sono situazioni di pericolo nel Mar Libico per i pescatori italiani quando si avvicinano troppo alla costa libica.
Additionally, the defense minister explained that Italy has been assessing the risks involved, noting that once the flotilla enters Israeli waters, the operation could be perceived as hostile despite its humanitarian intentions. Previous attempts to use Israeli ports for safe unloading were rejected, which led to a new plan involving Cyprus and the Latin Catholic Church of Jerusalem to ensure that aid can be delivered safely to Gaza. The global Sumud flotilla, which comprises about 50 civilian boats, including activists and lawyers, was recently targeted by drones near the Greek island of Gavdos. All passengers remained safe. Italy, along with Cyprus and Israel, supports the proposed plan to hand over aid, while the flotilla insists it will continue its journey. Mohammed Osman on the telecast with me. Let's hear it from you, your perspective with regards to the flotillas that have been targeted by the Israeli military, where the Israel government says that there is a need for the flotilla to send its aid through Israeli ports and not take other navigation routes.
Thank you for having me, Mega. Greetings to you and to your audience. Of course, the Israeli government's statements always defy logic and deny facts on the ground. They tell the flotilla to deliver the aid to Israel so that Israel can give it to the Palestinians, while Israel is the one the party that is depriving the Palestinians in Gaza from receiving the right amounts of aid or the appropriate or the needed amounts of humanitarian aid in order just to survive this vicious war that is being waged on them by the Israelis themselves, as you know. And actually during on the course of this war, sometimes aid was halted, the entry of aid was halted for weeks and months, causing a famine in Gaza. So this is a non-starter when the Israelis try to make such arguments or make such pledges that they will not honor under any circumstances. This flotilla is not the first one to head to Gaza in an attempt to break the siege and deliver more humanitarian aid. This is the third one, as far as to my knowledge. The first one, which was launched back earlier this year, and it was attacked near Malta with a drone, and it was just one vessel. The second vessel that attempted to go to the Gaza Strip was intercepted by the Israeli Navy in international waters in the Eastern Mediterranean and was boarded by the Israeli troops, and the activists were arrested and deported back to their countries. Now,
right.
the third flotilla now will face probably the same fate, because Israel always enjoys a state of perpetual impunity, and I do question whether Italy will be willing to take any decisive action to protect the flotilla as the defense.
But why is there such resistance by the flotilla occupants to send over aid as per the routes that have been specified by the Israeli government, by the Israeli naval forces?
Because most of this aid will not reach Gaza, and I'll give you an example. Egypt is the primary route through which aid enters the Gaza Strip, through the Karm Abu Salam border crossing. It's a border crossing that is shared by the Palestinian Gaza Strip, Israel, and Egypt. And before that, there was the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and the Gaza Strip, which was destroyed from the Palestinian side on the Palestinian side of the crossing, was destroyed by the Israelis when they occupied the city of Rafah, and they shuttered it, preventing the entry of aid from over there. So now the aid that comes from Egypt enters from the Karm Abu Salam border crossing. In Egypt, over 5,000 trucks are lined up carrying international humanitarian aid from Egypt and many other international stakeholders that is ready to flood the Gaza Strip with the needed foodstuffs and medicine and other means of basic sustenance. The Israelis barely right now let 15 to 20 trucks a day, while before the war, from Egypt. Over 700 trucks entered the Gaza Strip daily in peacetime to keep it alive, to prevent it from starvation, to satisfy its basic needs. So you can imagine now the Gaza Strip, which is torn by war, 90% of its population is displaced, 80% of the medical infrastructure has been destroyed, 75% of housing units have been destroyed. So there's a dire humanitarian catastrophe over there, and yet Israel will only let from 15 to 20 trucks, maximum 30 trucks daily. So this is a policy adopted by Israel to enact a state of perpetual humanitarian disaster in the Gaza Strip in order to depopulate it eventually.
Thank you very much, Mohammed Osman, for joining me and sharing your perspective. Shifting our focus to the other big news, Thailand's new Foreign Minister Shihasek has urged both Thailand and Cambodia to reduce their military presence along the shared border to ease tensions. Speaking on his first day in office, he stressed the importance of upholding the ceasefire agreed in July after the deadly clashes that left at least 48 dead and displaced thousands. Shihasek called for the withdrawal of heavy weapons, clearance of landmines and a crackdown on illegal activities.
เราต้องไปอีกก้าวหนึ่งความสงบนั่นก็คือการที่เราจะลดกำลังหรือการที่จะมีการถอนกำลังอาวุธหนักเนี่ยออกจากบริเวณชายแดนนะครับเพื่อไม่ให้เสี่ยงต่อการเหตุการณ์รุนแรงนะครับ So I wanted to maybe pose this question to my Cambodian friend. You know, we have two paths that we can take. The path that we've taken is the path of confrontation, which only leads to more losses. The other path that we desire to take, but we cannot take it alone, is the path of peace, a path that benefits our two countries. So again, we cannot take this path alone. And so we have to work to take this path together.
ผมจะยุบสภาผู้แทนราษฎรภายใน4 เดือนนับตั้งแต่วันแถลงนโยบายรัฐบาลต่อรัฐสภาซึ่งคาดว่าเราจะยุบสภานะครับภายในสิ้นเดือนมกราคม 2519 เพื่อคืนอำนาจให้กับพี่น้องประชาชนเพื่อให้พวกเขาได้ใช้สิทธิ์เลือกตั้งภายในเดือนมีนาคมหรืออย่างช้าต้นเดือนเมษายน 2519 พวกเราทุกคนพร้อมแล้วก็มีความยินดีเป็นอย่างยิ่งเต็มใจทุ่มเทเป็นอย่างยิ่งที่จะรับราชการบริหารราชการแผ่นดินนะครับสนองพระเดชพระคุณนะครับสนองพระมหากรุณาธิคุณและตอบสนองพี่น้องประชาชนชาวไทยทุกคนนะครับนับจากวินาทีนี้เป็นต้นไปครับขอบพระคุณครับ
China has urged the United States of America to remove what it calls unreasonable tariffs and create conditions to expand two-way trade. A Commerce Ministry spokesperson made the remarks when asked if Beijing was prepared to buy U.S. soybeans.
关于大豆贸易，美方应采取积极行动，取消相关不合理关税，为扩大双边贸易创造条件，也为全球经济发展注入更多的稳定性、确定性。
China, the world's largest soybean importer, has not purchased any U.S. cargoes from New Harvest. Instead, importers have been buying heavily from Argentina, where a temporary removal of export taxes has made prices more competitive. Hopes for renewed U.S. soybean sales faded after a recent call between Presidents Xi Jinping and Donald Trump that produced no progress on farm trade. Typhoon Ragasa is ripping through the southern mainland China, causing widespread disruption and leaving its mark as one of the strongest typhoons in the region's recorded history. In Hong Kong, waves led to widespread flooding throughout the city. Schools and flights were suspended while emergency personnel conducted rescue operations for hundreds of residents in Macau. Transportation services and manufacturing facilities were temporarily suspended in several cities, with tens of millions of yuan allocated for relief and recovery efforts. Meanwhile, rescue and restoration efforts are now underway in full swing in Taiwan, Hong Kong and Philippines following the typhoon, and citizens of these places are looking forward to government-aided support measures.
我都听他们广播了，他讲要躲到2楼了，他讲水位一定会到1楼这样的。那后来呢？我就跑到2楼啊，一起来就都是泥巴了，里面的橱柜都东倒西歪了，脚踏车我都快通通倒了啦。
All right, shifting our focus to the other big story. Overnight, China led several nations in unveiling new climate pledges, announcing its first ever commitment to reduce emissions by 7 to 10% by 2035. President Xi Jinping revealed the target at a climate leader summit, stating the following.
Let me take this opportunity to announce China's new NDCs as follows. China will, by 2035, reduce economy-wide net greenhouse gas emissions by 7% to 10% from peak levels, striving to do better.
The move came with the veiled rebuke of America, which President Xi Jinping suggested were going against the trend by retreating from global climate agreements, referencing U.S. President Donald Trump's anti-climate speech at the UNGA General Debate.
Then they said global warming will kill the world, but then it started getting cooler, so now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't miss. It's climate change, because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong. They were made by stupid people that have cost their countries fortunes and given those same countries no chance for success. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail. And I'm really good at predicting things, you know. They actually said during the campaign.
The new pledges come ahead of the COP30 summit in Brazil, where world leaders are expected to present more ambitious targets. There have been countries within the global south, including India and China, the countries with the biggest populations across the world, that have pledged to reduce their carbon emissions by 2035. This is in direct contrast to the United States of America, that under US President Donald Trump refuses to act on measures that need to be taken to contain global warming. Desmond Majekodumni joins me on the telecast. Desmond, a response from you with regards to the very constructive role that China and other countries in global south are taking to reduce carbon emissions. The big announcement made by Xi Jinping at this UNGA press conference, that video conference that he was holding with the member nations, talking about how it is going to be reducing its carbon emissions by 7 to 10% by 2035. Why do you think the US administration is not moving in the positive direction when we talk about cutting carbon emissions?
Yes, well, the reality is that they have unfortunately got themselves very, very embedded in what we can call the overt capitalism system. And, you know, whilst one does, at least I personally do feel that the capitalist system, it does drive competition, and competition tends to drive better services, better facilities. But if that particular system is unbridled and not sort of tempered by a basic compassion, then it becomes out of hand, out of control. And the profit margin becomes the ultimate gain, the ultimate goal, no matter what the expenses, no matter what the costs are. And whilst obviously, making profit from your business investment is very viable and very necessary, you cannot sacrifice the common good, let alone the life of people, women and children especially, at the cost of profit. And the reason why he is making this kind of declarations is because he sees that in order to transit to the clean systems, to the lower carbon footprint systems, it is going to affect the profit margin of certain very, very, very powerful and very big organizations. And so this is something that has come about. However, the good news is that a lot of the American public are beginning to pick up on the reality that climate change is very real. Right. Remember what happened. Yeah, just on a brief moment. Remember what happened on the 4th of July. 2 disasters in America on their Independence Day. One in Texas, 140 people died because of a massive flood, and a lightning bolt struck a place in the Arizona desert that is still burning till today. It's almost been extinguished. So that was a sign that, the American people, who are the largest contributor of the CO2, should wake up to the realities of the necessity to care for nature.
Absolutely. And talking about the incentives that have been cut down drastically by the Trump administration in his second term when it comes to clean energy, green energy, he's also been combative in criticizing wind energy, calling it a scam. How do you think European Union, he was speaking to Ursula von der Leyen just a few months ago and speaking about wind energy, and does not really contribute to ensuring that the environment is safeguarded and environment is secure from carbon emissions. How do you think, the world's push for a cleaner, better world, which is also the United Nations agenda at the UNGA that is ongoing, going to be fulfilled if the world's most powerful economy is not backing this initiative?
Excellent question. Great initiative. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you see, the silver lining on this very, very dark cloud, and because of organizations like yours, which is able to link up the whole world, and we're getting a lot of young people now tuned into the reality of the situation, that climate change is actually the biggest problem humanity has ever faced. This is certified by the vast majority of scientists. So the reality is that we're going to come together. We're already coming together and demanding. And a lot of our systems, whilst not very pure democracies, do have the reality of the masses. The voices of the people are beginning to resonate, and they need to resonate a lot more, a lot stronger. And when enough people...
Right. Absolutely. Desmond, thank you very, very much for joining us on the telecast and sharing your views. Apple has asked the European Union to scrap its Digital Markets Act, claiming it harms security and disrupts the user experience. In a formal submission, Apple argued that the law aimed at increasing digital market fairness has led to delays in the new features for EU customers and created risks by allowing rival app marketplaces. Apple also suggested enforcement should be handled by an independent agency and not the European Commission. The company's criticism comes as the European Union recently fined Apple €500 million for violating the Digital Markets Act, a ruling Apple is now appealing. Shifting our focus to France, a Paris court has now found the former French President Nicolas Sarkozy guilty of criminal conspiracy in a case which has seen him stand trial for allegedly accepting illegal campaign financing from the regime of the Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi to secure his 2007 election victory. The court acquitted Sarkozy on passive corruption, embezzlement of Libyan public funds and illegal election campaign financing. The criminal conspiracy charges relate to his involvement in a group that prepared a corruption offense between 2005 and 2007. The court is still detailing its ruling and has not immediately sentenced the 70-year-old Sarkozy. He can appeal the verdict, which would suspend any sentence pending the outcome. The Paris court ruling makes Sarkozy the first former French head of state convicted of such a high-level crime. Prosecutors had argued that he secretly funneled millions from Gaddafi's government into his campaign coffers, a claim Sarkozy has denied throughout a 3-month trial earlier this year.
Nous sommes à l'aube d'un moment qui est un moment historique, à la fois pour l'histoire de notre pays et à la fois pour notre histoire judiciaire. Il y a quelques années, c'était impensable qu'un ancien président de la République et que d'anciens ministres soient confrontés à la justice pénale. Ça a été rendu possible. Ça a été rendu possible parce que nous avons une justice qui fonctionne et désormais, nous attendons du côté de Sherpa une affirmation d'indépendance dans un dossier qui est d'une extraordinaire gravité.
Gautam Mukherjee is on the telecast with me. Gautam, this case that has been going on in the courts of France in Paris has finally ruled against Nicolas Sarkozy, and he has been found guilty of criminal conspiracy in case of receiving campaign financing from Gaddafi. How do you react to these developments and the charges that have been leveled against him? And of course, the prosecution has won the case.
They have convicted him, or they have let him off?
They have found him guilty of these charges. There's another charge on regarding corruption, which they have let go of.
Yes, that's what I thought. Well, you know, he was the first conservative president in France in a long time, and he left under a cloud with all these charges. Now that he's found personally not corrupt, that will go a long way to reinstating him, particularly now when the right wing of the French polity is making a strong bid for power. Sarkozy is from that group. Of course, he's 70 years old now, and whether he will play an active role or not remains to be seen. To accuse him of conspiracy when he's been let off for personal corruption is, in my guess, probably going to be overturned in appeal when he manages to, go through the court process. It's only the first rounds, and if they have found him guilty of conspiracy, you see, it's hard to establish. It was in Gaddafi's time. Gaddafi is dead. Libya is broken into pieces. America moved in much after France did, and did a lot of damage to that country. France was in fact a friendly collaborator with the Gaddafi regime, and it seems difficult to prove any conspiracy of that period at this long distant time.
Right, absolutely. Talking about, conservative leader right now, there are the liberals that are in power. Do you think there may have been a political intent whatsoever in pushing the agenda against Nicolas Sarkozy?
Well, as far as the judiciary goes, they found the right guilty of, again, very similarly, funneling funds into the party that was meant for campaigning, and it went into the party, and that is also under appeal. Marine Le Pen and her party were accused of that. This smacks of similar things. Remember, the whole polity, including the judiciary in France, has been very far left and left for decades. and much of the population is also left and far left. So when there is a backlash, principally because of immigration, which is roiling the entire European continent, then the leftists are on the back foot and the rightists are gaining ground, principally because there are too many immigrants who are making a lot of trouble on a day-to-day basis. So yes, the judiciary could well be acting in cahoots with the left.
Okay.
But whether this will be valid and upheld in appeal, I don't know. I have my doubts.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Gautam, for joining us on the telecast and sharing your views. Well, with that, we come to the end of this telecast of the World Report on NewsX World. Stay tuned.